Good afternoon. My name is Pete Saronis, and I am super excited to be your moderator today for an event where we will do a number of things. We will meet some incredible thought leaders in our country. We will address one of our national monuments, if you will, a treasure in the Nevada National Nuclear Site, as well as the Office of Technology Transitions at the U.S. Department of Energy. As far as me goes, I spent 25 years in government. I love bringing conversations together, and I'm very honored to be here today. And hopefully I just stoke a conversation and we can riff off one another and learn a lot about the great work being done out of the OTT, which is an acronym, Office of Tech Transitions, and the NNSS. And with that, I'm going to introduce the folks, but allow them to talk a bit about their passion. Dr. Vanessa Chan, the Chief Commercialization Officer for the United States Department of Energy, the first Chief Commercialization Officer, which is amazing, and the Director of Office of Technology Transitions. Two hats. Welcome, Dr. Chan.
Thank you.
You bet. And Neil Miller. I'm sorry. Let's go with Neil Miller, who is looking at right now. Neil leads all business operations and services across the MSTS enterprise at the Nevada National Security Site. We'll learn a little bit about that. Neil Miller, though, wears the second hat as the chief strategist. But if you look at the pedigree here inside the Beltway where I'm living at the moment, Neil is well known across the Office of Management and Budget, as well as in the Department of Energy, where she served in many roles, but most notably the acting Undersecretary of Energy for Nuclear Security and the former Principal Deputy Administrator for the National Nuclear Security Administration. Say that 3 times over. Mark Martinez, President and Senior Manager out the Nevada National Security Site, a gentleman who's got 30 plus years experience spanning national laboratory experience, expertise, whatever you call, but he's had an incredible walk, about 23 years at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. Mark blends a strategic, tactical, operational mindset, if you will, and just somebody who's going to give us a bit of an insight when we kick this off as to this treasure that the NNSS is and a lot of the R&D that's coming out of it. Ms. Melissa Hunt, Director of Applied Technology for MSTS, which is again the Mission Support and Test Services Management and Operating Unit for the site. Melissa's intelligent work in so many areas, from remote sensing to special technologies to defense, nuclear, non-proliferation. You can read about it, but an amazing individual. And we're going to jump right in. And before Vanessa gives her comments, I was given strict instructions to read something prior, and forgive me, Miss Bridget, as well as Laura, as your moderator today. This WebEx call is being recorded and may be posted on DOE's website or used internally. If you do not wish to have your voice recorded, please do not speak during the call. If you do not wish to have your image recorded, please turn off your camera or participate by phone. And if you speak during the call or use a video connection, you are presumed consent to recording and use of your voice or image. There you go. So, Vanessa, Dr. Chan, why don't you start with those opening remarks, and from there we're going to move right into everybody and take turns. Who you are, your role, your passion, a little bit about your journey and how you ended up in these amazing places and why you love working there. Floor is yours.
Thanks, Pete. And of course, it's been very quiet around here, except for now. As soon as I'm going to go on a webinar, everyone's decided to do yard work. So apologies for the background noise. But as Pete mentioned, I am Vanessa Chan. I'm the first Chief Commercialization Officer, Director of OTT. And we're really excited that all of you are joining us today to learn about OTT's lab partnering service and the exciting work that we've been doing at the Nevada National Security Site, which is one of DOE's premier security resources. Now, the mission for OTT and my mission is to expand the commercial impact of the research investments of the department. And that's a really cool job because our complex at DOE includes 17 national laboratories and sites, and rightfully known as the crown jewels of the U.S. innovation system. And so what we're trying to do is make sure all the work that's being done there is getting out to the marketplace and being commercialized. The lab complex supports a full spectrum of research, from advanced nuclear power renewables to life-saving medical advances. We actually invented the MRI and proton therapy and was the start of the Human Genome Project, to game changers in materials and national security. And really, I think DOE is a misnomer when it's called Department of Energy. I really see us as a department of everything, because there's nothing that we can't solve here in the DOE. And so at OTT, we're working hard to connect industry with DOE-powered innovation and driving real-world impact from all the federally funded research that we're doing. So this impact includes developing and deploying technologies that can provide jobs, ensure social justice, and arm us with new tools in the critical fight against climate change. So at OTT, we operate in the space between the labs and the commercial marketplace, and we're really working hard to fill the gaps in commercialization through a variety of programs and tools. So for example, you may know about our Technology Commercialization Fund, which is a $30+ million initiative that pairs labs with external partners to commercialize promising energy technologies. We also drive economic growth through place-based innovation with a program of ours called EPIC, which is the Energy Program for Innovation Clusters. And here we fund incubators and accelerators to help us catalyze regional innovation hubs. And of course, we are trying hard to facilitate easy access to the DOE, and we do that through the Lab Partnering Service, an online tool where you can find nearly 40,000 patents applications, over almost 300 facilities that are open to qualified users, and hundreds of lab researchers that you can reach out to. So the NNSS currently has several facilities, technologies, success stories, and patents that we've highlighted on LPS. So make sure after today's session, you visit labpartnering.org to discover more. And that's really just a small glimpse of our work here at OTT and how we engage up and down the commercialization pipeline. And tech transfer is an instrumental mechanism within our nation's R&D ecosystem, and we are really proud to be a driving force behind it here at DOE. So I encourage each of you to head to our website, energy.gov/OTT, for more information, and feel free to contact us with any questions that you have, because DOE really is an avenue to solutions. So thank you for joining us today, and I hope that this is the first of many conversations highlighting and celebrating the remarkable assets and capabilities of the department. And with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Pete.
Thank you, Dr. Chan. And let me just brag a little bit. Dr. Chan, I always like to personalize a bit. You know, school is usually a good place. Hailing from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the University of Pennsylvania. If you Google Dr. Chan, obviously credentialed out the wazoo and just super impressive, and her passion is clearly infectious, from material science to just what an opportunity to have you in the DOE, a place I worked for 8 years of my 25-year tenure and got to know Neil Miller. So thank you for that opening remark, and we'll dive into that a bit. I think topics like impact, and I love the mission, expanding the public impact of our nation's R&D portfolio is super, super exciting and never more important today as we deal with things like critical infrastructure and the opportunity to innovate with government and industry. With that, I'm going to kick it over to Mr. Mark Martinez, who has a couple slides for us to kind of give an overview of this amazing treasure, the formerly known as Nevada Test Site. A factoid for everybody that until August 23, 2010, it was known as that, but now it's got this cool name, the Nevada National Security Site. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the floor and baton to Mr. Mark.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here, and I appreciate this opportunity to talk about a place that I'm pretty passionate about. I will undoubtedly revert back to calling it the test site. That is what it has been and what it will be. But let me start a little bit about myself first off, and then I'll get to the slide here in a second. I spent 30 years at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory and spent quite a bit of time in the weapons program as well as the laser program. I can say I went from the light side to the dark side. I went from the laser program out in the open, and then went down to the weapons program. And I spent a number of years working in the plutonium business and in the experimental side of things. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to come and work at the Nevada Test Site, first working with the subcritical experiments, and then later building an experimental facility there that's here and still operating today, called JASPER, Joint Actinide Shock Physics Experimental Research. I think one of the worst acronyms in the history of the DOE, but nonetheless, it won the award we threw it out to the employees, let them name the site, and that's what won. But anyway, during my time there, I just sort of fell in love with it. I fell in love with the attitude, the can-do attitude, the importance of the work that was done. it was mentioned, Dr. Chen mentioned the human genome work that the DOE has been a part of. That actually has roots. If you go back in time, that has roots at the Nevada test site. And so there's been tremendous work that's come out of there, and it's just fantastic to be part of it. So I was at Livermore. I was planning I was on the slow glide to move out and go on to into retirement, and I got a phone call saying, "Hey, would you be interested in another opportunity?" I immediately said, "No, I'm not really that interested." And the guy who's my chief of staff now was the guy on the phone, and he said, "Well, it's Nevada." And of course I said, "Oh, it's the one place I would probably go and work at." And so, fast forward a few years and we're here. And so the Nevada test site is a remarkable place. The Nevada, I already did it, the Nevada National Security Site, or the test site, is a remarkable place. Now, if we could put up the slide, I want to say this. So the site itself, it's large, it's remote, it's centrally located, it's between the laboratories, and it's secure. And I would say you can put all of the NNSA sites, you can put them all together, and they fit comfortably inside our site. It's large. It's remote, like I said, 60 miles northwest of Las Vegas. It's reasonably located between the weapons laboratories, the Sandia, Los Alamos National Laboratory, and Livermore, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. And then, obviously it's secure. And I would say a couple other things, and this is kind of important. We control our land, but we also control our airspace. And controlling that airspace gives us some unique opportunities that I'll talk about. Let's go to the next slide, and this will help us sort of see what we do. The role of the Nevada National Security Site has been and is and will continue to be, validation or certification of the stockpile. Now, everybody knows we don't do underground testing anymore, so is there a need for the Nevada National Security Site? Well, yes, because all the computer codes, I just heard at the recent deterrence conference that we're going to exascale computing. This fantastic computational capability that the nation is building to ensure that we have a stockpile that's safe, reliable, and secure. It's largely based, as it says, science-based stockpile stewardship. So we're using computer codes to do this. Well, all these codes are benchmarked against data. And the data is coming out, a lot of the data and very critical, important data is coming out of the Nevada National Security Site. So, you can see the various sites that are up there. So with that, let me just say a couple final things. We are not a national laboratory. We support the national laboratories. We are a site where we can implement, large experiments, high risk kind of science that is necessary to do, and we can implement that, or we can execute that out at the Nevada National Security Site. But to be able to do that job, we have a need to integrate with the laboratories early and often. And so we have a science side that is somewhat lab-like. It's not anywhere near the size of what the laboratories do, but we do a lot of research. And a lot of what we do is trying to take ideas that the laboratories have and develop them to a point where they can be deployed experimentally, as well as develop some of our own experimental capabilities and tools. So with that, I think I'm going to stop, and maybe that's a good background to what we're doing. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this and maybe answer any questions that people have. With that, I think back to you, Pete.
You got it, Mark. Thank you for that. And again, folks, we have a number of participants. If you have a question, use the WebEx format. We'll get some in. If we don't answer them during today, obviously we'll get back to you. Again, just to remind folks, today's a day to celebrate two incredible organizations that are so important to the fabric of our innovation ecosystem in our country. The OTT is the hub. to Vanessa's point, Dr. Chan's point, the lab partnering service, check it out. It's an amazing resource to connect, to convene, and work with folks. I do, Mark and Melissa and Neil, want to make sure we definitely hit on the NNSS and its site-directed R&D program, because I think that is a nice blending of what the OTT is all about in terms of celebrating and sharing stories and all the great stuff that's happening to, again, expand that public impact. So we will come back to that. Miss Neil Miller, fill in some of the blanks. I know you have a number of titles, but I think your story of how the NNSA and the NNS and their history together, maybe that's something we can address in your opening remarks, because a lot of people confuse or at least mistake the one for the other sometimes. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. And actually, when Mark made his point about Jasper being a lousy acronym, I was thinking to myself, honestly, the Forrestal building is full of them. And after spending 3 years within the NNSA and having to wrap my tongue around all of those N's and S's, I'll just put it out there. But in fact, the Nevada test site, the NTS, became the NNSS literally 2 weeks after I started as the principal deputy in NNSA. So I never even had the opportunity to just make it easy. The difference is, and I would say that as awkward as it is to wrap your tongue around that, the foresight of Senator Reid, who was the big proponent of the name change at about that time, the foresight was to want the name to become associated with more than just testing of weapons, because as we've seen over the last number of years, really since underground testing ended in the 90s, we are doing a lot of things that support certification of the stockpile, none of which involve or have involved the need to explode a weapon. And to Dr. Chan's point about things that spawn other things, in my own time associated with Department of Energy, which started for me at OMB and went into DOE and back to OMB and back to DOE, I've had the opportunity to see things grow out of programs I recall from my very young childhood when I was first at OMB, and were programs that were created at the time that have gone on to lead to other programs, including and especially supercomputing. And the development of supercomputing in this country in service of the modeling of the explosions in that stockpile to certify without actually having to explode. So the computer codes that Mark mentioned and the work that goes on to analyze that, using data from the old tests, but not requiring us to actually explode weapons to understand, and this is where the spawning comes. Not only our own stockpile and the materials, the effect of aging on the materials in that stockpile, but other people's stockpiles. And to understand what may or may not be happening in North Korea or other countries that are either developing or trying to develop weapons. Our understanding of that stems from our understanding of our own work, and the science behind it is foundational science. And I think that's one of the interesting things for all of the sites within the Department of Energy, all 17 laboratories, as you mentioned, and certainly the sites of the NNSA, is that the foundational science that goes on in all of these places leads and connects to foundational science in many areas, not just the obvious ones that particular site is connected to. So when I think about my time as the budget director for the entire Department of Energy, I had the opportunity to see programs that had nothing to do with nuclear energy or nuclear security, but yet were part and parcel of the development, again, for example, of supercomputing and other technologies that have derived from work done in another site. So it's really, what you had to say, Dr. Chan, really resonated with me. The can solve almost any problem. And I was thinking to myself when you said that, oh yeah, but what about world peace? But then I thought, world peace also. So pretty good place.
Well, Neil, thank you. And again, I think, this time will be quick as we're just kind of talking about, the who you are, how you got there. And I think what you just teed up, Melissa, as we move to you, is that, people think of the NNSS and, right off the website, nuclear weapons science, global and homeland security, and then environmental programs. Sometimes people go, huh? I thought it was all stockpile kind of thing, but environment is obviously tied to that, in addition to our nation's critical sectors, Homeland Security, DoD. So what a diverse mission and an opportunity to collaborate with this incredible institution. Melissa, maybe we can dive a little bit into some of the other capabilities, from threat detection, waste disposal, remote sensing, aerial measurement, first responder training. I mean, the list goes on and on. Can you speak to some of the programs that really you have grown up with and led, and maybe paint a picture of really the heartbeat of the NNSS?
Certainly. Thank you, Pete. It's an honor to be here today. And one of the things that I was thinking about when we started to set up this panel was, what is my passion, and why do I and hundreds of other people really like to work in the middle of the desert, right? And it really is, I think, the pride that we take for working in an organization that really does make a difference, right? That we're part of the national security and that we have a role in that. And then from a personal standpoint, I'm an engineer and scientist by trade. And Dr. Chan, I was in Boston, but I was across the river at Boston University. So certainly I love hard problems. I love working with our scientists and our engineers as we collaborate together to do that. And as mentioned, my current position is entitled the Director of Applied Technology for Global Security. And so that really is the other work, the non-stockpile work that we do. But I will tell you, in that area, we really do partner quite a bit with industry and with doing tech transfers and also our patents and things like that. And where that comes from is really the work that we do. I'll talk a few key areas. I think Mark mentioned earlier that we do have a UAS range, an unmanned aircraft systems range, and also a counter UAS range. And why is that so important? Well, a couple things. It's outside of the national airspace, so that does allow us to do really quick, rapid test beds for maybe UASs that we're not sure of what their performance will be, right? We've already partnered with commercial industry there, and we're in the process of working with NAIS, which is our Nevada Institute for Advanced Systems, Autonomous Systems, and that's really the partnership that Nevada, the state of Nevada, has with the FAA. So it's really a key partnership there with industry, and that will allow others to come out and come into our site in a relatively quick, easy way, right? And I think along those lines is, as you talked about, we do quite a bit of difficult task, right? And how does that come about? Part of it is we build tools for needs that our customers or our sponsors might have. And a lot of that is around diagnostics and detection systems. And so this is one way where we do partner with industry. Sometimes we can build anything at a small scale, right? And so if it's needed at a much larger scale, that's where we really would look to industry. Either they're going to manufacture the entire tool, and that can go to a small or a large manufacturing company, or it could just be the components of some of those equipments that we've designed that, that we might use our special sauce on, but certainly have a role in, industry and private industry and those things. And so that's an area where we are able to partner with industry. And then in addition to that, I'm very pleased to say that we have recently had one of our patents be selected as part of the OTT's FedTech Startup Studio, and that is something that we're very impressed with and excited about. And the purpose of that program is really designed to put intellectual property that are currently within DOE into the hands of the private sector. And so that patent, that project is called ESMS. I wrote it down so I wouldn't get it wrong with all the acronyms. And what that stands for us is the Electromagnetic Spectrum Management System. And why is that important? It really was a revolutionary approach on how we could control, I don't want to get too technical, but radio frequency in a manner that wasn't just straight up jamming. And so you could see there, we have one use for that, but you could see where industry would have other uses for that. And so we're excited to partner with the FedTech program, the startup program, and we'll be partnered with individual small companies as part of that. And so that's really exciting for us too. And so that's just a touch of some of the things that we do, and certainly happy to discuss anything else too.
Yeah, please. And again, as we get into now that folks, I hope will look you up and read about each and every one of you. I like to call it the kind of quick fire, fireside chat-ish sort of discussion. Let me come back to Dr. Vanessa Chan, who, prior to coming to Energy, you have entrepreneurial spirit, you have leadership, you now are in this role of helping bridge that valley of death in many cases. People call this, how do we, market pull and the push and so forth. Can you talk a little bit, because Dr. Chan, a question I always get today and back in the day was, how does one work with the national labs? How does one work with the Department of Energy? And I think of these SPPs and CRADAs and ACTs and technology licensing, or maybe just speak to that challenge, but what you're doing to kind of hopefully catalyze and bridge that valley.
So that's a great question. The way I think about DOE is we really are a catalyst, right, to drive towards the impacts we want to see in the world. And so this is one of the reasons why I really love what Laura and Rob and my team have built with the lab partnering service. Is it literally is a window for you to type in a keyword and see what it is that we're doing at the DOE in a topic that you're interested in. And armed with that, you also can reach out to lab researchers or see patents that you might want to license. Or you can even say, hey, there's a facility here that is useful to me that I would love to get access to. I'm a small business. I don't have the capital to create a facility like this, but is there a way I actually can come onto the actual lab site itself and do some work? And so I'll be perfectly honest with you, as an entrepreneur, we're creative. There's no one size fits all. So you guys go there, see what you want, and then give us a call and we'll explore it with you to see what we can do to help make things happen. I really do see the DOE as the place for all possibilities, and we're open to it. So I think that is exactly why Laura and Rob have built this tool, is it gives you a way to see what is it that we've got in these 17 national labs and sites. And I think this is why we're doing these kinds of seminars and workshops, is so that you can all hear directly from folks like, Mark, Neil, and Melissa and others about all the great stuff that's going on. So the world's your oyster. DOE is here to serve everybody, right? We are, funded by your dollars. And so reach out to us to see what is it that you want to do with us, and we'll figure it out.
I love it. Boy, that was to the point and spot on. So yeah, shout out to Laura Burke for sure. Rob Bechtel, just the brains and tireless efforts to build this, not just a website, but a portal to that opportunity to really spur innovation, accelerate it. So thank you, Vanessa. And again, we don't have enough time to get into every wonderful program, but there are myriad opportunities to partner with the labs, and leveraging the OTT is one incredible mechanism. Mark, let's come back to you again. You gave a nice overview, a wonderful overview of the rich history of the NNSS. Something that's caught my attention with Jose Sinibaldi, of course, and one of your thought leaders, the site-directed R&D. I think specifically that program, and this is, I think, the mission statement, the key to meeting NNSA's current and future nuclear deterrence and non-proliferation mission needs. So again, it's not just about nuclear weapons, but it's also an opportunity to do some R&D and partner with the labs. Can you speak to that program a bit and some of the success to date?
Yeah, so we have the ability to spend up to 4% of our budget on site-directed research and development, and so that 4% may not seem like a huge number, but when you multiply that by $750 million budget, those numbers can start being significant. The laboratories, they can spend a little bit more. They can go up to 6%, and they obviously have bigger budgets too. And so this is I think that, having spent time in the complex, this is a really useful tool. I think the SVRD, LVRD, the portfolios that they work on is a very effective way to promote science. It and it does something else that people don't realize. It also gives the scientists the ability to, it helps us attract people. They can continue to work on their passion while also contributing programmatically. And so it's an incredibly useful tool that I really wish more people could understand, and because that's a tremendous engine for the nation. Now, for us, we have a lot of interesting work that's going on. It's a competitive process, so our scientists put in applications for different kind of research areas that they want to be involved with. They're really, really interesting, and unfortunately, you have to, so many don't make the cut, and so the ones that are sort of the cream, the ones that we end up funding are cream of the crop. And let me pause there and say something else about our scientists and our researchers. We're not as big as a national laboratory, and we are not a national laboratory, but our scientists are pretty good. One of the things I would point out is that we are typically a recipient. I'm not sure that a program is going to continue on, but the R&D 100 program or award system, which is sort of like the Academy Awards for our scientists. On a percentage basis, we do quite well. We typically have at least a person that's a winner and a couple other people that are recognized. And so if you look at the number of people that we have and the number of the labs, we actually compete quite favorably. So our scientists we have top-notch scientists who are doing great work. So some of the areas that we're interested in are areas that, as Melissa talked about, various different diagnostics or capabilities that are associated with diagnosing things. We will also partner with the universities around us as we work in these research areas. We just got back from a trip up with University of Nevada, Reno, and where we established additional working relationships with them in seismic, in high energy density physics, in even some very interesting chemistry things that we think, I don't want to steal their thunder by talking too much about it, but could be revolutionary in how we do detection and especially radioactive sources. And so those are the areas of focus for us. We have a chief scientist, Jose Sinibaldi, that comes from the national laboratories. Before that, he was at the Naval Institute in Monterey, and so he's got a good history there of being able to develop and focus science. And so he's been working with our scientists, and so that's a program that's going along pretty well. So again, it's an ability for us to use government funds to work on research projects of interest to us. It's highly competitive, and it's very similar to what the laboratories do with laboratory-directed research and development.
Yeah, there were some acronyms in there, folks. LDRD. It's very, again, I think I'd rather just speak to the acronym because I'll probably butcher what it really means or what it stands for. But please, these are opportunities. And again, in the spirit of socializing the OTT, and we hope to continue to do this with, the role that OTT plays as that hub, the nexus, whatever you want to call it. I like to think of it as the connective tissue to the great opportunities to partner with labs. Neil, I want to come to you. Chief strategist, titles aside, I see it's leading government affairs activities. The Beltway. You've got an incredible presence, imprint, if you will, at the NNSA, and what a catch for the NNSS to have you. And what are you seeing as maybe some challenges and opportunities through this, bridging the NNSS with places like DOE and other federal agencies? What are you hoping to, say, a year from now, there is opportunities and more folks are working with us and bridging that Beltway Nevada connection?
Yeah, thanks, Pete. That's a very good question. because I think that, you know, one of the things I said to Mark when we first talked about my working with the site was that both of us had a sort of dedication to both recognizing the history and the historic nature of this place. I happen to be in Las Vegas today, although as you know, I'm normally in DC. The history is both impressive and at the same time the history. And I think that what we are passionate about is all of the things we see coming forward at this site. The national security missions that are our foundation, we are an NNSA site. The fundamental missions that we carry out on behalf of the NNSA are absolutely, in our view, not only are fundamental, but will remain fundamental. But the potential for this site, and we see this already even in the interest within those missions of what else could be done here. We see this as as you know, the future's so bright we've got to wear shades, if you remember that one. We have the ability to take in investment and immediately put it to work. So that's the difference in I think one of the differences I see in my knowledge of sites and plants over these many years. We're not a plant, so, and that needs to be said too. So Mark has done a good job of saying we're not a laboratory. We're also not a plant. We're not here to produce widgets or refine uranium or do any of those things. That's not the role we play. It's not the role we ever played. We are a fundamental testing place. It's where people, as Mark said, come to try out their ideas and see whether they can make it work. If you take away the nuclear security aspects, both stockpile and non-proliferation, from that statement, we're a place to try out the ideas and see if they work. You begin to get a sense of, at the size of this place and the kind of permitting that is that we have to be able to carry out activities at the site, the possibilities become quite enormous. So to that extent, although it's a cliche to say something's unique, especially in the capabilities in the DOE and NNSA world, for me it's unique. And it's one of the reasons why I've always been attracted to this place and attracted to, as I said at the beginning, its future and its future possibilities. So I'll throw it back to you. One other thing I'll say though, you asked me about the I think you were nodding to the political aspect of it. And I think that is something we've been very, very encouraged over especially the last year, that we have the attention of people in the Nevada delegation who have been hearing our message that we are an engine of economic development in this state and a piece of the solution to retaining the technological expertise that the state is training in its university system. So, and that is for everything, frankly, from the scientists and engineers to do the kind of work you would think about here, to right down to people in the area that I run for the business, which is business operations. We've got business students, accounting students, finance students, the people who understand how to buy and contract for the services and goods that we need to do all of these things coming out of Nevada schools. And that's been, of course, very attractive for the delegation to understand.
No, thank you. And again, I think it's so important and wonderful that a national lab, a place that when I would visit would stay, and even to this day say, you know, we're open for business. We just don't always do the greatest job of selling ourselves in terms of what we can do. And I think for those watching, and obviously Vanessa spoke to this, you know, there's the science side. I thought you were going to say it should be the Department of Science, but I love Department of Everything because it uses the acronyms, Vanessa. And I think that academic / business side of all of our sites, plants, facilities, et cetera, is something just, folks, it's not that it's hard to navigate. It's just kind of connecting those dots, if you will, and making a phone call, taking a visit, and having Neil, you as that bridge, I think is very significant. So congrats on that. Let's pivot to Melissa for a minute here. And Melissa, you highlighted a bit of the exciting stuff when I hear of UAS, counter UAS, working with the FAA. Can you expand a bit about maybe on a project or two that might be for the audience exciting, whether that's in the nuclear non-proliferation or maybe an environmental program? Because the diverse nature or mission of the NNSS is one that we hope folks will understand after today and then in doing their own research. But what is some exciting activities and initiatives that you're currently working on over the next few months?
Hey, thank you, Pete. I love the opportunity to talk about the great work that our engineers and scientists are doing. And part of that is we do have some remote locations too. And so within my group, we do a lot of work at the Remote Sensing Laboratory. That's here on the Nellis Air Force Base. But we also have the Special Technologies Laboratory, and that's located in Santa Barbara, California. And one of the things that really resonated with me was when Dr. Chan said, the small business owner is very entrepreneurial. Well, that really describes the Special Technologies Laboratory. They're right at around 100 people. And I think Mark mentioned the fact that, we're not a large laboratory. And so one of the things that I think attracts scientists and engineers to us is that ability to work on multiple projects. And so we do see that at these smaller remote sites that we have. And what's really special about the Special Technologies Laboratory, another acronym, STL is what we call that, is they do work across all of our areas. So yes, nuclear non-proliferation, stockpile, but also the work for our other partners. We call that the SPP programs, right? And part of what's so exciting about that is I think it was mentioned, how do you get across that valley of death? And so part of that is, the large laboratories certainly do the lower technical level research, and then, out to industry where we want to actually get it out to market and things like that. And so they call that area in between the valley of death. And that's really our niche. And I think that's important. You've probably heard over and over again, right, that we have a very specific role. A test bed is part of that. Coming to the site, there are a lot of exciting things that you can do here. One such project that we've had is out at a place that is called our Non-Proliferation Test Bed. And what we're allowed to do there is actually release chemicals. And we can do just about everything at the site, from chemical to biological, to radiological, explosives, and nuclear. And DuPont, which is a very well-known company, right? They, of course, have quite a few chemicals out there and things like that. So they've come in the past to actually do releases out at we call it MP Tech, it's our facility. And then we actually have a current project. It's sort of the next generation of the DuPont company, but it's a commercial company. And part of that is, what if there was a serious accident that they were in, right? How would they respond to that? And you can do all the training that you want, but until you can actually have consequences along with that training, right, that they actually could be exposed to a dangerous chemical, I think it takes the level of training to an entire new level. And that's what we're able to do. And so we have an upcoming project working with a company like that. They're going to come out and train their employees using our facilities and our test bed that we're going to set up for them for a chemical release. And I think that, there was a small mention about the SDRD program, and that actually does lead to additional projects. And so I can tell you that our UAS program actually was initially funded through our SDRD program, probably starting about 6 to 7 years ago. And those were folks both at the STL and also at the NNSS. And so that just tells you how small investments can really plant seeds to now where we have an entire test bed that we are actually doing tests with commercial companies and partnering with, of course, the Nevada Institute for Autonomous Systems. And so that's just a fraction of the projects that we have. I would tell you, in my portfolio alone, I probably have over 150 projects that are going on at any given time. Some of them are large, some of them are much bigger, but it really is the excitement. And I think Mark had mentioned that, that's really our lure to bring people 60 miles northwest of Las Vegas, right? And that's the fact that they really can do this work. And it's an array of all their technical skills, and sometimes technical skills they didn't have, but they're able to learn here. So yeah, we're excited for the work that we do and the partnering with industry that we can have.
I'm going to come back to
let
the.
me jump in
Oh,
on this,
go for
Pete.
it. Go
let me
for it.
just
Go
jump
for
in.
it, Mark.
I love to brag about my people and what we're doing, and we're going so fast here. So Melissa mentioned a couple of really important things. STL, I didn't mention them before. This Special Technologies Laboratory. If anybody needed something miniaturized, I think they may be the best in the world. They really might be. I don't have an exhaustive study, but they're remarkably good at that. So miniaturization is something. She talked about our UAS areas. One of the things we can do is we can basically knock down UAVs and not worry about, things on the ground that it might hit or interact with. And we saw the Army come out and look at a company that was they're standing up anti-UAV capabilities, and they were desperately looking for a place to prove to the value of what they're doing. And I was out there watching as they did some, what I'll just call it a little, I'll call it directed energy, but it was just knocking UAVs out of the air. And they could pick and choose which one they knocked down and which one they didn't. Remarkable. The general that was there was just so excited. And so this, Melissa, gave you just a sense of this. And the last thing she talked about is this valley of death. And that's what I tried to say earlier. We sort of sit between the laboratories. Our job is often to take the laboratory ideas and make that applicable to an experiment. So we sit a bit in that valley of death and can help the technologies mature, and we can actually help connect people with some of those fundamental researchers at the labs. And so I just couldn't let that one go. So back to you, Pete.
No, listen, I love that you love to brag, and I'm actually getting a few comments just for the record from Vanessa to Melissa to Neil and to Mark, and this makes my day, and that's what I hope we're sort of initiating here. It's the passion. It's the purpose. And I'm going to come back to Vanessa, who just, again, what an awesome opportunity for you to lead this organization. I mean, mission aside, purpose aside, I mean, you have been living and breathing this just based on where you've come from. And I guess, the front door to DOE's products, facilities, and expertise, and you have LPS. Vanessa, the question I have is, if somebody coming to the OTT to facilitate, is it, hey, if you want to do a deal, you can come to us. We can tell you the types of partnerships. But, what do you say to that entrepreneur who wants to work with a national lab? Can they come to the OTT? Can you help shepherd them through? Or what tip can you give to these folks who have the ideas but just don't know where to get started?
So first of all, I have to say, I learned a lot just listening to Melissa and Mark just now. And in fact, I have a bunch of ideas of people I want to bring to you based on the fact I had no idea you guys were doing these things. And so I also want to say I may be the front door, but I have no idea how big the mansion is behind me. And so part of the reason why we do these workshops is every single one we do, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea we did this. Oh my gosh, I had no idea. And then all these ideas come up with that. And so I think the key thing, Pete, and what I'm trying to share here is we do a lot of stuff. We are the Department of Everything. We do, I bet you there's something related to whatever it is that people are interested somewhere in the DOE. And that is why this, lab partnering service is so important. I feel a little bit like an infomercial here, but it really is true. And in the chat, there's a link there for where you can go. And entrepreneurs really don't need me to tell them what to do, right? Like classic entrepreneurs are scrappy. In fact, I was just told by one of the senior leaders, like, Vanessa, I love how scrappy you are around what you're trying to do here at OTT. And I was like, that's what we do as entrepreneurs. We just figure out where we need to get something done. We find the right people and we make it happen. And so I think for the entrepreneurs there, don't think of DOE as a scary place that you can't come and try to figure things out and be scrappy. I will tell you, when I was interviewing for this job, I was a little bit nervous about coming into federal government because, some of us who are more lay people, right, assume it's this big cumbersome beast that you can't get anything done. And it's not at all the case. This administration has set a tone of where we are getting things done in a scrappy way and just having things happen. And so someone like me would not want to be coming here if we can't work with entrepreneurs and mirror the culture of entrepreneurs. And so what I will tell all of you is don't be afraid to, use your scrappy skills to figure out how you want to interact with us. And, you know, it may be connecting with us, it may be connecting directly with Melissa, Mark, and others. You know, it's really up to you what you think the pathway is. But as all entrepreneurs know, you know, you have to make 10 phone calls before you find the right lead. And so feel free to kind of reach out everywhere across the DOE, and all you need is that one connection to make this stuff happen. So, but start with Lab Partnering Service. We're giving you a leg up because you can go in there and actually find some people who are relevant versus calling a 1-800 number, which can be a little bit more challenging.
Well, 100%, and I love scrappy skills, and you are right. I guess where I was coming from it is I usually get asked who maybe it's not the entrepreneur, it's somebody who just wants to have a conversation or, you know, work with, and there's that scary persona of, oh, it's energy, I'm not allowed to go visit. I'm like, go up to Berkeley, just walk on campus. Now, LA, Los Alamos might have something to say about that, right, Neil, or Idaho? But thank you, Vanessa, and I love that you're having some light bulb moments of neuron firing, because that's, again, the intent is we got to communicate and collaborate. All right, it's 2:55. I'm in the parting shot moment, so please, we got 5 minutes, and we're going to start with Neil. And yes, Neil, I'll suck a little air out just so you can get your thoughts, but it's something you want to leave with the audience, something for folks to get excited about, and then we'll go around the horn to Mark, to Melissa, and then finish it up with Vanessa. So Neil, give us something that you want to leave the group with today.
Yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed hearing all of it, including my colleagues that I listen to all the time, because as we've heard, you hear things and you learn things all the time from what different angles people are telling you. But I think what I would leave people with is, in my experience, plenty of people come in the front door, the side door, the back door, through the chimney at DOE, those that just make the effort. There are people on the other end who are ready to reach their hand out and show you how to do it. And it is a place where lots and lots of stuff happens. And we see this in Nevada just as you see it across the entire complex. The people in Nevada are experienced, innovative, and ready to make things happen regardless of the mission. They're dedicated to the mission that they're involved with, and they are able to come at it at an angle that the rest of the complex uses and needs. And I think that's going to be true of anybody who wants to come and work with us.
Wonderfully said. Melissa, I'm going to jump to you next. Sorry if I'm messing the order up, but let's go Melissa, Mark, and Vanessa. Parting shot.
Sure, I'll just close with, we do really cool but highly technical stuff in the middle of the desert, and it's exciting, it's fun, and we look forward to sharing it with more partners. So thank you, Pete.
Awesome. Mark.
So my shout out's going to go to Dr. Chan's organization. I spent a lot of years in the laboratory system, 30 some odd years working at Livermore, and I routinely felt we need a means to connect these really bright minds with the problems that are out there. And I had this great idea. I think I'll form an organization where I'll try to do that myself. So I'm excited about the organizations being stood up here as an American. I think it's incredibly valuable as an American. And I love the fact that we're going to take these great minds and make them more available to the American, to make the world a better place. We can do environment, we can do climate change, we can do all these things. And like I mentioned when they started off, a lot of the great things are going. COVID vaccinations has ties to early days and then as you can draw a link to some of the early days out here. And so there's so much that can be done. I'm excited about this. Glad to have somebody scrappy. I haven't met Dr. Chen before today, but glad to have somebody scrappy and willing to tackle this because it's been needed for decades. Thank you. That's all.
Yeah, the chief scrappy officer. We got a new title for you, Dr. V. So, Dr. Chan, take us home.
So look, I think the take home is, as the DOE, E does not just stand for energy. It can stand for environment. It can stand for exascale computing. It can stand for excellence and eagerness. We're eager to connect with all of you. So we really are the DOE, Department of Everything. And so please use LPS and and as a front door to figure out where you can connect into us. But we are here to work with you. I'm excited to put public-private partnerships on steroids, bring people to the labs to figure out ways that we can work together. And I look forward to interacting with all of you and seeing how we can serve this great nation and get us out of this climate hole that we're in and into a better world. So I really believe strongly that we're on our way, and the Senate has confirmed that today too. So I look forward to working with all of you in doing some transformative things for our amazing country. So with that, thank you, Pete.
You bet. And I'll just finish up by shout out. Thank you, Dr. Chan. I know your time is in demand, but we really loved having you out. It was an honor to meet you finally. Shout out to Rob Bechtel, Laura Burke, Marcos, Harsha Gonzalez. I mean, there's so many folks I know behind the scenes who are really enabling this three-legged stool, which I'm going to steal from OTT, but I think it applies to the NNSS, and that's Discover, Connect, and Partner. That's a mission. It takes effort. It takes sweat equity. And thank you for tuning in, and we hope to do this again soon. So have a great rest of your day.